You could try something and measure it. And if you don't have a good time in it, if it's not working for you, you can always just take it off and do something else. So I think that that's, very much how we try to, run our company, to develop new products. We're listening to the customers. We're seeing what works, what doesn't, and keep it moving.
Step into the world of success with Your Brand Amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. I have had the luck to be published in 3 recent articles that I found via featured.com. So it's really exciting to me to bring the founder, Brett Farmiloe, onto the show today. Brett, Featured is one of my go-tos that I've always used for PR clients. So it's a whole other experience turning it on myself and being able to also get PR, which of course we need, but we always forget that we need it too. So I really appreciate the platform that you created, but I want to, start at the beginning. You started a coffee company with Hugh Jackman that sold, and then you pivoted into marketing, public relations, and founding Featured. So can you tell us a little bit about how that path happened?
Thanks for having me on the show, and thanks for the opportunity to try to weave, 15 years of history into 15 seconds. But just to clarify, so yeah, I totally lucked out to be a part of the initial launch of Hugh Jackman's coffee company. I by no means was a co-founder. I was supporting on TweetDeck and going from 0 followers to ultimately, that company was acquired by Keurig, which was really cool. I ran a marketing agency for 10 years, and now I run featured.com, which is a platform that connects sources with journalists for stories. And so any journalist, any publisher can post a question on Featured. We'll invite vetted experts to answer that question, and then we will essentially get those insights featured in articles. And so today, there's more than 2,500 publications that will post questions on Featured, and we've got quite a few experts who are sharing their knowledge, which is really exciting to see.
Yeah. Well, talk about marketing, public relations, expertise. Was that something that you knew you wanted to get into?
Nope, not at all. So I was an accounting major in school, and my first job out of school was an auditor. And so my, stumble into marketing was I wasn't quite sure that auditing was the right career path for me. So I started a website that would document career stories. And I decided to travel around the country with a couple buddies in an RV and lining up interviews with a bunch of people that we wanted to meet and learn about how they got to where they are. And so we traveled 38 states, interviewed more than 300 people, and documented all these stories on a site. And so basically that was my mistake in the marketing is these stories started to rank really well on search engines, and people were continuously coming to the site. I ended up going to work for the acquiring company for that site for a number of years, and then basically tried to launch an iPhone app company. That failed. Stumbled into the Hugh Jackman opportunity, and then basically was a freelance marketer for a number of years after that. Got the website to rank on page 1 for the term digital marketing company, and then decided to start a digital marketing company. And so that was kind of the backstory into how I got into this.
Yeah. And then when did you decide that, you were going to exit that because you were acquired, and then you said, okay, what's my next opportunity? And then you moved into this other world of...
Yeah. Ran the marketing agency for 10 years and serviced more than 500 small business clients. And the number one problem that small businesses have is how do you build visibility online? How do you ultimately connect with your customers in a meaningful way? And the thing that small businesses have an abundance of is knowledge about the business. They just don't have anywhere to share it. And so we created a platform that allowed our clients at our agency to answer questions that were about, for example, one of our clients was an eyelash extension supply company. And we created questions that were around eyelash extension supplies, and our client would answer them, and then we would get them featured. So that was kind of the initial experience that got us onto this path. And we started to get way more traction with the platform than we were with the agency. So that's why, we sold the agency at the end of December 21, started to focus on Featured full time in January 22. So here we are about 3.5 years in.
Amazing. And you've already made such a difference to so many people.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, not everyone gets to be on this podcast. Not everyone gets the microphone, and everyone needs an outlet to share their life experience and expertise. So it gives me incredible joy to sit back and see someone answer a question for the first time, have their insights featured for the first time, and then to see, them share that on LinkedIn and demonstrate their thought leadership. That's so hard earned. It's so many people got their heads down working for 20 years and no one ever comes along to ask for, what they've learned along the way.
And one of the fascinating things to me is you are really taking care of the small business and the entrepreneur who, like you said, has deep expertise in their exact field. I have an example that I share often with my students at USC about, a small gardening company called Garden Girls in Houston, Texas. Obviously super specialized, but we were immediately able to get them placed in Martha Stewart Living, Real Simple, Homes and Gardens, because they could answer those very specific questions about having a clover lawn, right? Or how do you winterize your flowers and your vegetables, and things that we wouldn't necessarily think of are really important. But for those publications, they needed those experts.
Yeah, absolutely. We see that all day, every day with all these journalists who come to feature.com. And then also the other company that we recently acquired and revived is Help a Reporter Out, or HARO, which is kind of the original platform in the space. And so like the requests and the whole reason why journalists use these platforms is because finding good sources for stories is hard. Like, how are you going to find someone to talk about four-leaf clovers in the next 20 minutes? So that's why I think a lot of journalists will trust feature.com and HARO to turn to get connected with those sources.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because often when we think about brand visibility, we think about pitching a journalist, pitching a publication with our stories, right? But if it's not the right story at the right time, then maybe you're filed away for when they need that expert. But this is a whole other way of doing things. So I've actually had Peter Shakeman on the show, who created Help a Reporter Out. Then, of course, it merged and became part of Cision, and then they put it behind a paywall. And there's a big uproar that this might be too inside baseball for people who are not in the world of earned media. And then they created Source of Sources, and then I want to hear more about how you're able to acquire Help a Reporter Out, how that part of it, besides getting 3 emails in your inbox a day with different articles, is different from Featured. Do you have a lot of crossover? Is it very different?
Yeah, I think the main difference is that HARO is a 3 times a day email newsletter that summarizes requests from journalists and puts that out into an email format, and you could reply directly to the reporter with your pitch. And so really, really simple service. As you mentioned, was originally founded in 2008 by Peter, was acquired by Vocus at the time in 2010, and then merged with Cision in 2014, was discontinued in April of 24 when they rebranded over to Connectively as a platform. And then Connectively was discontinued in December of 24. And that's when we reached out to the general support at connectively.us email address and said, hey, we're interested. We'd love to talk with someone. And so about 3.5 months of, back and forth and trying to get it over the finish line before we ultimately acquired and revived it in mid-April of 25. And so that's basically the backstory with it. And the difference is that Featured is a platform. It essentially allows you to centralize and search all of these different journalist queries and reply to the ones that are most relevant to you. And you could track your pitch from the initial pitch to publication. You could kind of get the status things. Basically, Featured corrects all of the weak areas of Help Reporter Out, and nothing against Help Reporter Out, but it's found product market fit, and it found its fit in 2008 when it was just an email newsletter, and nothing's changed with it. So, the weaknesses are that when a journalist submits a query, you have to wait until the next newsletter goes out before that journalist can get pitches. And so there might be like a 3-hour delay between when they submit and need a source and when they can ultimately get pitches. So Featured helps fill a lot of those gaps. And, for anyone who's looking to maximize their media exposure, I recommend both. I recommend going to Featured and setting up alerts and getting notified when there's a relevant query. And at the same time, HARO is just a really entertaining email to receive. There's like some really odd stuff that
yeah,
comes through.
This is true.
Yeah, and then sometimes it's a dead-on hit. So
yeah, and that's I don't like to be a proponent of tools unless I've actually used them and been able to prove them out. And I've been able to do that with Featured. And I mean, I even today posted on my LinkedIn as we're recording this interview because I got a ping like, hey, here's this, like, the latest article that you're in. Here's the link.
Good
And
timing.
yeah, and funnily, and I mean, that's how we met is because I posted and the emails that you get say tag Featured on LinkedIn. And I'm like, well, LinkedIn is my favorite social media platform. So of course I'm going to do that. And then you and I were able to meet and then have these further conversations.
Honestly, just to jump in, that's one of the coolest things about Featured is the relationships that different sources are able to establish with themselves, not just with a reporter, which is great. We see those relationships happen all the time, but the fact that we might be like-minded, we might be commenting on the same type of article, we're both featured in the same article. There's some really strong connections that we've seen emerge out of the community, just like this one.
Yeah, nice. And you do have, a freemium model and a paid model. So can you talk about that? Because just quite frankly, I'm on the free one right now, but because I'm getting so much great content, my content is being published, I'm like, okay, now I need to move over because then I can answer more questions.
Yeah.
I'm usually answer the PR space, but I'd like to answer on the digital side as well. So I can expand the number of things I'm looking for or that I'm qualified to do.
Sure. Yeah. So the business model, it's a freemium B2B SaaS. So anyone could answer 3 questions a month at no cost. And then if you want to answer more than that, then there's a few different subscriptions. So there's a light plan that starts at $19 a month or $11 a month if you pay annually. That allows you to submit 10 queries or 10 answers per month. Our pro plan is $49 a month, and that gives you unlimited submissions plus a bunch of other data about the pitch itself so that you can kind of qualify things based off of how authoritative it is or what the expected link attribution might be. And then our business plan does all that. Plus, it allows you to author and submit byline articles. And so a lot of experts want to submit their expertise in more than 4 to 8 sentences and need an article to do it. And so byline articles can help support that.
Yeah. And how are you seeing artificial intelligence, of course, I have to ask this question, play into the role that you play and with Featured and Harrow?
Yeah, I think that it's more positive than negative. I know that there's a lot of negativity that surrounds AI. More positive because from a platform perspective, we're able to better match questions with experts. We could analyze, what people have traditionally engaged with and then analyze a question when it comes through, identify verified experts who would be qualified to answer that, and then, put that opportunity in front of them. So that's like one example of how AI is expediting matching. And then in terms of one of the challenges that we also see as a busy small business owner is how do you get the time to answer a question? Like, how do you do that? And I think that AI can help a business owner get that initial baseline of hey, here's a suggested answer to this question. I've already answered, let's say, 20 questions on Featured. There's already a good solid knowledge base there. How does AI analyze that knowledge base, analyze a question, suggest a potential answer, and then put that in front of someone so that they could either say, you know what, this is great. Let me edit this and add a little something to it and then submit. But that's another way that I think that we're seeing the evolution of this is that AI can help more people share knowledge who traditionally don't have the time to actually do so.
Yeah, but something really important that you said was that this is based on the experts' knowledge base. So they've already
just let it run.
they've already answered things that they are truly an expert in, not just stuff they're pulling from ChatGPT or from wherever that they are. You might think they're qualified on paper, but they actually might not know that area of the business.
Totally. Yeah. You got to have some sort of knowledge base, whether that's on Featured or whether that's initial documentation that you have just sitting in your Google Drive or, your LinkedIn social posts the last 10 that you've posted. There's got to be something that gets that initial baseline. And I think that the beauty of it is that the more that you're sharing, the stronger that knowledge base is. And I think that's a real opportunity, looking ahead for platforms like ours over the next couple of years is that we could unlock way more knowledge in 2025, 2026 than we were able to, 2-3 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and what was the marketing strategy and the brand strategy for Featured? How did you get in front of the journalist and in front of the small business owner?
Yeah, I think that the, marketing strategy, it's really organic and word of mouth is really, really powerful. So looking at your own success, it's like you just post on LinkedIn, a place that you were featured on. And so maybe I'm following you on LinkedIn and I'm curious about, hey, how did you get featured? And there's a natural connection and word of mouth that transpires with that. And then same thing with journalists. I think that journalists traditionally are going to be hanging out in private groups around, conference tables at a conference and sharing what works, what doesn't, what are you hearing on the street? And I think that the more success that we're able to have of matching journalists with sources, the greater that platform, grows in terms of that word of mouth.
Wow. So you haven't had to do very much performance marketing, advertising.
No, I don't think we've ever spent $1 on any paid ads
That's amazing.
at this point.
Yeah.
So that's good. And, I think that it just goes back to the core success of, it's right here on my t-shirt, it's featured. Like if we can't get people featured and deliver on that value proposition, then, it's not going to be a success.
And then what about, I'm sorry, I just feel like I'm throwing questions at you, but I'm really interested if a small business has multiple experts, right? Can there be like one business profile with each expert having their own thing, or you have to do a separate profile for each one of them?
This is my dream.
Because this is something I'm interested in.
This is my dream scenario. And this is where I think marketing is going, is people are really important to the marketing strategy for a business because journalists and publishers want to feature real experts. And so it's no longer enough for a business to put someone like myself out there, like, hey, the founder and CEO is the sole spokesperson for this company. It's now like if I think really progressive companies are going to enlist their HR manager as part of their marketing. They're going to enlist their CFO as part of their marketing. They're going to enlist, all of these different people with unique areas of expertise to participate and voice their expertise and represent that company. And so I think that, like, going back to my dream scenario is you have some internal champion that's like, yes, featured, I could see it. This is the way. And they go create a single account. They have a bunch of different profiles that they're adding to represent, the different executives from the company. And then that person's monitoring and identifying opportunities, working internally with those people to submit a good query or a good response to a query, and then getting that published. And I think that the business is going to really benefit as a result of enlisting, their employees, not only from a marketing perspective, but I think from an employee engagement and thought leadership perspective.
Yeah. Well, and that leads to another question. And now I start getting requests like, hey, we think you'd be a really good fit for this article. So it's not just me having to go search, right? Is that because I've been submitting to various articles and I've been successful in getting published in those articles? And so now the machine learning algorithm is working to identify opportunities that it thinks I would be a perfect expert to be in.
You're on to us. No. I think, what we're learning from Harrow and sending 3 emails out a day is there's opportunity all around. Harrow, people get frustrated because, like, do I really need 3 emails a day with stuff that's not relevant and I got to dig through it all? And the answer to that is yes. Like, every once in a while you find a gem, and every once in a while you'll see something that will inspire you to forward it on to a contact that you haven't talked to in a while. And it's like a great excuse to get in touch. And at the same time with featured, we don't want to have that noise. We don't want to be able send you all of these opportunities every single day. And you're like, whoa, I got a business to run. Like, send me something when you got something. That's kind of the mentality of featured. So yes, based off your job title, based off your company, based off of where you've had previous success, we're trying our best to identify which questions you would be most interested in answering and where you're going to have the most success.
Yeah. And so obviously Harrow is a beloved name, right? From people who know it before all of the transitions that happened over the last few years. But you also said that it's a newsletter format that comes out 3 times a day. It's very specific asks a lot of times. So I'll go through and say, okay, a person I'm representing doesn't qualify for any of these. I don't qualify for any of these, or there's maybe one, but then, it's a lot of information that they're asking for. So where do you see both featured and Harrow going? Do you have plans to change any of the trajectory of both?
Yeah. So I think that Harrow is unique in that I feel like it's already found product market fit. And so the biggest challenges that we inherited with Help Reporter Out was quality and trust. Because of how simple it is, it's also kind of easy to spam, like, quite frankly. So when a journalist would put out a query previously, this is one of the reasons why I believe it got discontinued, is that journalists were just getting a bunch of irrelevant responses. And it's really hard to police that, because if you don't have a platform that can analyze those different things, then, it's difficult. So for us, reinforcing quality and restoring trust is top of mind. And I think that if we could do that successfully, Haro kind of is going to be a success just as is. With Featured, I think there's like a ton of different technology that we could implement to bring out more knowledge in folks. I think that everyone's an expert in something. And if we could help elevate that, then there's a lot of different core features and a lot of different, the evolution of where and how people want to get featured. Our platform can help support that.
Yeah. And you're also a serial entrepreneur. So
that just means I've failed a lot.
But also that you're engaged in a lot. You're interested in how things work. You want to break them down, put them back together. You have ideas. I mean, Featured is something. There are other somewhat similar, but not quite similar companies out there that I won't name, since we're talking about you and Featured, but that don't necessarily do as good of a job. Or maybe they'll present an opportunity, but then it's one that they get, everybody says is invited on to a certain broadcast, but then you have to pay if you want to get a copy of it, and not quite as honest and true earned media as what we find on your platform. So yeah, I'm just wondering, like, talk about that a little bit, how you vet these opportunities, and then for yourself, do you think you're going to continue being interested in this earned media space? Do you see yourself putting a little bit more marketing into it, or doing, other offshoots?
Yeah, I think that, like, my interest level, this is a problem that I've explored since like 2007. Going back to the RV, and after having traveled 16,000 miles, 38 states, speaking with 300 people, the thing that I learned from that is that, like, it's really important for people to have an outlet. And that's what drives me with Featured, is the fact that, like, everyone needs this outlet, and it should exist so that not only people can have a good outlet, but so that the world can have access to all this new knowledge that doesn't exist online. And I feel like we're at a real danger, or a real, like, tipping point right now, where it's like, okay, we've got all the AI generated stuff. How do we do better? Like, how do we go one level above that? And the only way that I think that we do that from, like, a humanity perspective is to share. So that's our responsibility as a platform, is to try to create those opportunities, to try to connect those opportunities with the right people, so that we can elevate, the world's knowledge, that's a pretty big one. Like, I could get behind that and work at that every day. So, we've built a great team. You mentioned, like, hey, how do you vet opportunities? We've got a team upstairs that's, like, looking at every single query that's coming through. We're looking at who's submitting the query, what's the outlet. We're trying to maintain the quality in that regard, to make sure that we're not going to ask people to do work of answering a question without an intention that that's going to be used in a good way.
Yeah. So it's still human researched, human based.
As much as I want to automate it, like, this has been like on the product roadmap for so long. How do we automate question approval or query approval? And it's something that still, I think, to maintain that quality, needs the human touch from our team.
Yeah. I interestingly just created a work stream using agentic AI to vet people coming on my podcast, because I was starting to get people that I'd worked with, maybe their podcast booking agency before, but I started realizing some of those agencies were just using me as podcasts that any of their people could come on, so they could say they had one of 40 or however many podcasts that person paid for. And I don't want to be that person. Like you, I want to have quality control. And so I built out a system so that I have bots go and do, like, really deep research on every guest. So instead of me having to go, and my human team having to go and do hours of research, now it's 60 seconds, and I have the answer and a score based on the things that I'm looking for in a guest. So there are ways to do it and still keep the human, in charge.
Yeah, I'm glad I passed the test. So yes.
So we can talk about that separately. But I think there's some really interesting use cases. But I, again, just appreciate the fact that this is a genuine platform that wants humans to answer, not robots, and wants real answers from people who are experts. Do you have a profile of the users? Like, is it mostly, people who have had 10, 20 years of experience? Is it high level? Is it a lot of beginner experts, baby experts who are just trying to get their feet wet?
I think that's the beauty of the platform, is that it's accessible to anyone. And what I mean by that is, like, you might get a query for Gen Z and workcations and how they're, doing business and personal travel, and the reporter's interested in taking that angle. So you don't, in that case, need 10, 20 years of experience to answer that type of query. I think from a persona perspective, you see marketing and PR agencies that utilize it to monitor and get their clients featured, which is the original use case for me personally. You see in-house marketing teams, you see do-it-yourself small business owners that don't necessarily have the budget for a marketing agency and want to do it themselves. So I think that you see those personas answering questions, as well as like seasoned experts that just need an outlet to share their expertise. And then on the publisher side, you'll see journalists who are looking for a particular source for a story. You're looking for media companies like Fast Company. You have brands with blogs like GoDaddy or Zapier. You also have associations like that are looking to engage their members and prospective members, like the Society for Human Resource Management. And so you see a lot, like, the value proposition of Featured is we're going to deliver you free, high quality content. And so that's something that I think is universally applied to many sites.
Nice. Do you have any big success stories that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton. Like, every minute a journalist gets connected with a source, via Hera or via Featured. So there's a success story that's happened however long we've been talking, multiply that, and that's exciting. So I think that, that's the quantitative side. The qualitative, like, I'll just share something crazy that happened yesterday, which I've been managing the support inbox this week just to get close to users and to, hear what's going on. And we got this one email that was from a professional witch. And the professional witch was like, "Hey, I heard like that, there was a relevant query for me. Can you forward me the most recent, the newsletter?" And so I look, and sure enough, there was a reporter that was looking for a professional witch to cite in the story, and someone had seen this and forwarded it on. And so, like, yeah, like, that is really cool to me. The fact that I didn't even know that was a thing. And sure enough, we were able to make that connection. So I think that's the beauty in what we're doing.
Yeah. And I also, I think last week or the week before, I did a workshop for people who want to get on stages more. And it was talking about PR and how they can get more earned media to get out there. And Featured and Hero were two of the platforms that I talked about, because I think they are right good for all of those use cases that you mentioned, whether you're a PR agency, which I've had a PR agency and I do consulting now, or if you are the entrepreneur who just wants to learn and try and see what's out there. And that's why I really encourage people, because I've answered, many queries. I've been, like I said at the beginning, in 3 articles, probably in the past 3 weeks. And they were different sizes of publications, but they're still great backlinks to me. And now I was given a pretty big opportunity yesterday. So hopefully I'll get in that article, because that's a major, major business publication. But see, it grows as the algorithm sees that you're answering, that you're engaged with the platform, then you get rewarded. As you do actually get published, you get rewarded with bigger opportunities when they do arise. So I think that's just really cool.
That's great to hear. And I think that there's definitely something to be said in terms of responding to queries. And I think that there's a whole other side of things that we could unlock in terms of supporting on the proactive side. I think, last week we launched a really, really soft launch of expert directories. So essentially surfacing profiles so that journalists, rather than putting out a query, they might be able to just find who they need to connect with and reach out directly. So what we're creating is kind of like a nice curated database of sources who, are willing to contribute and be featured. So I think that there's a lot of, calls to action here that we'll see for people, including, setting alerts, creating your profile, doing all the best practices to put yourself in front of journalists.
Yeah. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you want to share about you, your journey, the different platforms that, you founded or absorbed?
I think that just the call to action for anyone who's looking to increase their media exposure online is, number one, sign up for a free account on featured.com. Number two, set up your alerts, type in a couple keywords of stuff that you could talk all day about. And then 3, just see what happens. Like answer a couple questions when it comes through. And to your point, it's like, okay, I answered one question. What happened? Oh, I got featured in this article. Great. Let me do more of that and follow the success. And so I think that that's like the call to action there is take some simple steps and measure it. And I think that at the end of the day, if it connects you with customers, then it's a huge one.
Yeah, fantastic. So obviously we'll have the links in the show notes and also your LinkedIn, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, throw it out there.
Okay. Brett, I always ask if you have a favorite quote, mantra, verse, poem, family motto, words that continue to inspire you every day.
Yeah, I don't have a poem, but, I think that this is true in marketing and careers. It was told to me on the road trip that I took, which is basically, if the costume doesn't fit, take it off and be something else. And basically it was like a Halloween analogy and I use this all the time. You teach college students and when I speak with colleges, like Halloween's like a 4-day holiday in college. Like you go out Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday. And, people could go out on a Thursday night and be something. And maybe the Halloween costume wasn't a huge hit. You got the opportunity on Friday to take it off, put on a new costume and see if that fits a little bit better. I think that's true with a marketing strategy, with a career. You could try something and measure it. And if you don't have a good time in it, if it's not working for you, you can always just take it off and do something else. So I think that that's, very much how we try to, run our company, to develop new products. We're listening to customers. We're seeing what works, what doesn't, and keep it moving.
Yeah, amazing. I like that. As somebody who has done a lot of different, had a lot of different businesses in different areas and is always trying to evolve and learn and grow, that really resonates with me. So, yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Brett Farmiloe, Feature.com and Hero, for coming on Your Brand Amplified and just sharing a little bit more about your background, how you got here, and why you're so passionate about helping businesses get the right earned media at the right time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Of course. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.